Good afternoon, everyone. Thanks for joining us today. We'll start today's event with an introduction by BC Liberal candidate for Delta South, Ian Paton, and then go to BC Liberal leader Andrew Wilkinson. We'll then go to the line for questions. We have time today for one question and one follow-up. Just a reminder to please press *1 to get in the queue. Thank you, and go ahead, Ian.
Thank you, and thank you everyone for joining us here today in beautiful, known as the sunny part of Delta, Tsawwassen. My name's Ian Paton, your Liberal candidate here in Delta South. You know, folks, you know where I really should be right now? I should be in Victoria, along with all the other MLAs, including cabinet ministers, doing our job in the legislature at the fall session of the sitting of the BC legislature. But instead, we've been thrown into this 33-day snap election by Premier John Horgan. Folks, yesterday was the highest number of COVID cases in BC history, 200. We have outbreaks in our schools, in our hospitals, in our fire halls, in our seniors' home. This is wrong. We should all be in Victoria working for the people of BC to solve the issues and problems we have in here in BC with COVID-19. Folks, he also broke an agreement with the Green Party. He broke his own legislation agreement of a fixed date for an election a year from now, not now. So, folks, let's send John Horgan a message that the people of BC are certainly more important than his own job security. At this time, I would like to introduce you to a leader that will restore confidence in British Columbia. Ladies and gentlemen, the next Premier of BC, I'd love to introduce Mr. Andrew Wilkinson.
Thank you, Ian. Well, thanks for coming, everybody. It's a beautiful day here in Tsawwassen, and we're outside a tire store, and it's pretty obvious why we're here. We have a plan to revive the BC economy as we get through this pandemic, and it includes getting rid of provincial sales tax for a year, which means immediate reductions in the price of tires. But before we get to that, we need to talk about what Ian just talked about. We're having a totally unnecessary election. It shouldn't be happening right now. Our COVID count is way up because we're in the second wave now. We should be looking after the interests of British Columbians in the legislature because John Horgan had a deal that would have lasted for another year, except that he decided to tear up the deal, break the law that he wrote on fixed election dates, and drive us into this election, which is totally unnecessary. So here's our chance to send John Horgan a message. Here's our chance to talk about the future of British Columbia. Here's our chance to turn British Columbia around, because we're headed to a very difficult place. 1 out of every 4 small businesses in BC think they will go broke in the next 12 months. We're going to be in a very tight spot, and we need a bold plan for revival of the BC economy. It starts with getting rid of provincial sales tax for a full year, so that when you go to the tire store, you don't have to pay 7% tax. If you're buying an excavator for a construction business, you save 7% off the cost of a $300,000 machine. If you're going and doing irregular shopping, you don't have to pay PST on shoes. This is a really significant move to get our economy moving again and to put $1,721 in the pockets of the average BC family. We're also talking about getting rid of small business income tax so this store can reinvest in employees, in stock, and get themselves going again. These are the kind of steps that need to be taken to keep this economy moving. And we're also talking about looking after the people who need a bit of help. Our seniors with a $7,000 tax credit for home care, home repairs, and housekeeping. We're talking about $10 a day daycare. That's real $10 a day daycare, not the NDP phony promise of 3 years ago, but for any family under $65,000 of household income, get them the daycare they need, so that they can get back in the economy, so that they can get back on their feet and recover from this pandemic. Because we all know that the people most harshly affected by this economic downturn will be low-income families, particularly women, in small companies. They're the people who most need our help and attention, and we want to give it to them. So it's part of a big, bold plan to get BC going again. We're going to need that bold plan as we make our way through this pandemic. And you can see from the information we're receiving from the Provincial Health Officer, Dr. Henry, we're in it now, in the second wave, right in the middle of this election. And why is this election badly timed? Because I think we all know there's going to be no final result for a couple of weeks after Saturday, and then there's another 4 weeks after that to swear in a government. So you're talking about 10 weeks with no functioning government in the middle of a crisis. The tourism and hospitality industries in a dire crisis, and all they've been offered is a consultation process. Many of them will decide they can't make it this winter. And that's John Horgan's gift to the people of British Columbia, is an election in the middle of the time when we most needed stability. So with that, I think we'll turn it over to questions. Over to you, Carly.
Great, thank you. So we will start today with a first question from Mary Griffin, Check News. Go ahead, Mary.
Oh, hi, thanks very much. Just on the issue of the timing of the election, Elections BC says that there's a record number of British Columbians who have voted in advance of the 24th Saturday. It doesn't appear that people are worried because they are voting in record numbers, and I'm just wondering, how do you respond to that? In addition to Mr. Horgan said earlier that the 200 cases, according to Dr. Henry, are related to weddings and funerals and celebrations of life in the Fraser Health region, which is responsible for the majority of those 200 cases.
Well, you have to remember our seniors have borne the brunt of this epidemic. They're the people who've recorded the deaths in the long-term care homes. They're the people who are having trouble voting, and they're now being offered the opportunity to vote by telephone, which will be difficult. There aren't going to be polling stations inside seniors' facilities because John Horgan called an election in the middle of a pandemic. So there's some very basic things here that amount to unfairness. And when you think about it, 700,000 postal ballots get sent out. We hope that every single one of those is returned. But some people will find it difficult to fill them out. Some people will fill them out incorrectly. And it's a way of saying to those folks, you should have been given your full voting rights, and that should have been done after the peak of this pandemic next year. Instead, those people have been forced into an election right now when we can least tolerate it. And that all lies at the feet of John Horgan.
Do you have a follow-up, Mary?
I do. But doesn't this show that despite the pandemic, that you can safely vote during an election? Because as Elections BC has the numbers to verify, a record number of British Columbians are taking advantage of the different ways to vote.
We do hope that British Columbians use their democratic right and vote as they see fit. They've got till Saturday evening to get out to a voting booth, but that's very difficult for some people. And a lot of people, particularly our most elderly seniors, don't want to go to a public polling place. They may have received a mail-in ballot. They may have trouble filling out the ballot. Then they're asked to use a telephone voting system. These are all unnecessary obstacles to exercising democratic rights, and it was all totally unnecessary. So we do hope there's maximum turnout of voters so they can express their wishes and get the government they want. Let's keep our fingers crossed that people can find the way to vote that suits their needs.
Great, thank you. We'll go to the next question. Richard Zussman, Global News. Go ahead, Richard.
Andrew, it seems at this point a bulk of the cases are all linked to the Fraser Valley, and we'll find out more details at 3 o'clock, but it seems specifically around Surrey. Do you still believe that there should be a regional approach to restrictions for COVID-19? And if you are elected over the weekend, is that something you would recommend that the province considers?
Regional approaches to the epidemic have been followed in the UK, in Ontario, Quebec, Alberta, but not in British Columbia. So it's a very legitimate question, and it's something that will be raised, I'm sure, by whoever forms government with Dr. Henry to determine the best way of dealing with this pandemic. This is probably not the best time to be questioning public health advice, but it's a legitimate question, and it will need to be addressed as these case counts increase.
Do you have a follow-up, Richard?
You mentioned not questioning public health advice, but last week Mary Polak came out and said that if the Liberals are elected, there would be a review of the school plan. That was a plan that was approved by Dr. Henry. So aren't you, in essence, questioning public health advice?
Sorry, Richard, we didn't hear any of that because the speaker here has failed. So we're just going to get the speaker set up properly done, or turn up the volume on the other monitor.
Yeah, it could have been me too. I'm just going to keep talking until you tell me you can hear me. So I'm going to talk. Hello, hello. Can you hear me okay?
Turn that one this way. Can you turn that one off?
It's okay.
Okay, try again, Richard.
That's okay. I'm also in the midst of picking the kids up at school, so I thought that may have been a part of it. But
I heard your kids, so go ahead, Richard.
Mary Polak was out last week speaking about one of the things the Liberals would do is review the school plan. Isn't that in essence in questioning public health advice if you're going to launch a review into that plan that was signed off by Dr. Henry?
Well, the school plan has been a bit of a mess because John Horgan and the NDP did not contemplate hybrid learning. They provided no guidance for online learning for school districts. They just handed it off to school districts in the spring. They then turned around and cut $12 million out of the internet distance learning budget on May the 4th, which was a profoundly wrong decision. We should have more options in our schools so that more kids can be learning online, and that would provide the flexibility for parents, for students, and for public health to provide a more flexible system for education.
Okay, well, thanks, everyone. It looks like that's all the time we have for today. We will see you all again tomorrow. Thanks, everyone, for joining.
Thank you.